So as I mentioned, the presenters here, Michelle will be doing all the heavy lifting here today. Good morning, Michelle. How are you?
You're very well, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us, guys. I'm looking forward to presenting to you.
We're going to try and keep this as concise as possible. There's actually quite a bit that we can cover within Sicon Manufacturing, but as I suggested earlier on, this is in fact an overview. So there, to sort of talk you through a little bit of that. Sicon Manufacturing, as you can see here, the modules that Sicon produce are all installed and maintained within Sage 200. So when you're looking at 200, you can't see the joint. It effectively looks like it's 200. It's all part of it. All of the data is all, centralized. It's all pulled together so you can make better decisions with live information that you're being fed directly from. The modules are directly from 200 in itself. So if you're utilizing some of the fuller extent of the actual Sicon Manufacturing, you have effectively, you can see here, we've improved planning through using the likes of works order processing, the project costing modules, so that you're on top of your stock control. Sage 200 has a very decent, for people moving from 50 to 200, it has a much better stock control system. It's a far better, it has far better features to sort of keep on top of things. So it's got an integrated stock and purchase order module. The stock is integrated with the general ledger, so you can run all your KPIs based on the centralized information. But in using what you have in Sicon Manufacturing, you've got another level again on the production floor. The projects that you're working on currently all fed into one spot. Now those modules, the Sicon Manufacturing module itself is built up of a list of smaller modules which can be broken up and you can buy and set separately or all together. And that's why I say, we can cover, the smallest requirement to the largest requirement. And those modules are made up principally of the Sicon projects module, the kit, which is a step above the project accounting module that's provided by Sage currently. The kitting module, which is a simplified method of bill of materials, material and resource planning, which will allow you to sort of pull based on demand date all of the requirements necessary to fulfill the demand, and your works order processing, which effectively you can, as you are building up tasks that are required of the demand, you can forward works orders directly to individuals to carry out. That can be extended even further by using the likes of the shop floor data collection module, which allows the guys to tap into a screen of some sort to indicate where they are with the job in particular. So I just wanted to give you a brief. I'm not the guy to give the detail on any of this. That's typically Michelle. And with that in mind, what I'll do is, Michelle, if it's okay with you, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'll pick up, or we may introduce some questions at some point as well, but I'll principally going to hand it over to Michelle to give you an overview of the actual system itself, and then we can talk later on. Is that okay?
Absolutely perfect with me, Howard. Thank you very much. Just on the note of housekeeping,
yes.
If you want to add your questions into the chat, please do so. If we need to address them at the time, then Howard will interrupt me. He'll keep an eye on the chat and ask me questions. But if you want to save them to the end, that's fine too. We'll obviously make time for that. Obviously, if there's anything that we don't cover today, Howard's your man, and he'll be able to answer any other questions that you might have, or extend today's demonstration out for you so that we can actually do more personalized demo one-to-one. So with that in mind, I have a tendency to continue to talk until someone tells me to stop. So if there are questions and Howard needs to interrupt me, he will. So do please put them into the chat. I've got a very generic demo today. We are going to, I'm just going to show you my screen, guys. So let me just share my screen with you. So Howard, if you can just confirm that you can indeed see my screen in front of you.
I can indeed, yeah.
Fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to manufacture a Ninja air fryer.
Can I just step in for just 1 second? Sorry,
Howard,
Michelle. It's something important every time you do a demonstration on Teams for people that don't know. So if you choose view up at the top, you can choose focus on content, which will bring your screen up bigger. And indeed, if you select view again and more options and full screen, you'll get a much bigger screen to see everything. So just for people who aren't aware of it, I'm sure most of you are, everybody's been through Teams the last couple of years, but just a quick point to note so everybody can see the screen. Sorry.
No worries at all. It's a valid point. Otherwise, people start squinting at the screen. It is being recorded, so you can review it again, guys. But we are going to manufacture a Ninja air fryer today. And here is my Ninja air fryer 3. And I'm going to just take you in and show you what we do in Sicon Manufacturing to extend the functionality of Sage that you already have, to extend the functionality of the bill of materials module, which you may already have, and add into that everything that Howard has alluded to so far, which is, of course, the ability for us to be able to, in a structured way, manufacture that item, to be able to manage the processes and to be able to manage the costs that are involved in the work in progress of our manufactured item. This is all about control. So we're just going to pop ourselves into my Ninja air fryer first. I've got a couple of other modules switched on in my demo environment and which may be of interest to you. I am going to use them today. It's called Sicon Documents, the primary one. But if I just go in here and just show you, we've got 3 of these Ninja air fryers currently in stock. It is a built item, and therefore I am going to have a bill of materials for it. I've already designed one, and I'm going to be able to manufacture it. But I'm just going to show you some of the things that we switch on. So first things first, I'm just going to pop myself in and actually amend that item. And you're going to see that as well as actually having my manufactured item, I also have a little Sicon tab over here. Everything else that we do, not just manufacturing, is switched on in here. But the primary ones, of course, are going to be what we want to consider from a manufacturing perspective. Despite the fact that this is a Ninja air fryer, as my example today, it doesn't matter whether or not you are manufacturing food or whether or not you are manufacturing fully traceable serial numbered items. So very, very large solutions, pharmaceuticals, fast moving consumer goods, right through to the independent and smaller type technology like the Ninja air fryer. So we manage all of those things, and what work order processing is going to do is enable you to be able to put in place production instructions. So if it is more cost effective for you to manufacture 10 of these items because you have demand for 1, then you can affect in the system a minimum batch size or a maximum batch size, your economical batch size for manufacture. So behind the stock item, we switch on an awful lot of these areas. Mine's a very basic structure today, guys. I've got some nuts and bolts and screws and some plastic that require me to make this Ninja air fryer. But your structure of a bill of materials could be very complex. You may have multiple sub-assemblies. If you're in the pharmaceuticals business, you will have multiple sub-assemblies for each of your compounds that go into making up your final finished item. Those sub-assemblies can be treated in a very different way. And in here, we can determine whether or not we are going to build them, take them from stock, always ask me whether or not I want to build it at the same time. And there's a direct correlation between the sub-assembly and the finished item. It has the same number convention as /1. And you can have pretty complex structures of your works orders. Like I say, my example today is going to be relatively straightforward. We can obviously determine things like the finished item label, the reserved item label. We can design my routing for works order processing. In other words, which areas of my business does it need to go through to be manufactured? All of these things held against the stock item. In addition, if this was a component part, the things that we need to make this finished item, we can also instruct another element of the manufacturing suite, material and resource planning, to understand how we buy that product. Things like what the default supplier lead time is, whether or not we actually even want to include this component part in material planning. You might have a one-off thing that you bought 6 or 7 times or 100 times that you're never going to buy again. So you don't want the material planning solution to pick that demand up. So there's some settings around everything that we do. One of the other things that I mentioned, like document distribution, I've got a couple of images. So I'm just going to go in and view my documents. You'll see I have a product image in here. And I also have, doesn't look very like a Ninja air fryer, but I just wanted you to see we have images, we have product specifications, whatever those documents look like can be listed out and then used in my outbound documentation. We're going to see this in just a moment. So you're going to see the sales order acknowledgement has the product image and the product specification when I produce it. If this was a component part, I might say send to the supplier the product image with the purchase order. So lots of things that we can switch on behind that. The other thing that I've switched on behind this particular stock item is in the locations, which of course is standard Sage. And standard Sage says you have an ability to set the minimum level that you would like to hold in stock. If you always build for demand, that's fine too. What we're doing is creating demand, and demand can be either your minimum stock, it might be your demand from a sales order. You're going to see me do that in just a second. It might be forecast, it might be quotations, or any combination of those things that then tells material planning, I should go and build some of these. So whatever that might be. So because I've got that switched on, MRP is going to be able to pick it up. You'll also notice something different on this screen for those of you that are existing Sage 200 users, which is the ability for me to be able to define the stock location. Again, I know some of you will already be using some of the facilities that you have with DB computers. Mine is switched on to use our barcoding solution. That's why you'll see some different things on the screen. We're going to ignore those ones today. What you'll also be able to do is therefore, let's just go back into my suppliers. If this was a bought item, something that we either buy or we bring in, of course, I'm going to be able to put my suppliers in here. And there's a whole ream of little settings that you can then see in the system about how you purchase items, components, or finished items that you might either buy or build. The reason why that's important is because material planning is going to look at not just what your demand is for that item, not just what purchase orders you've already got on for it, but it is also going to look at the way that you buy it. Which supplier do I buy it from? What is their minimum order quantity? What is their pack size? So that the recommendation that we get from material planning represents not just my demand and not just what we've got coming in, but how we buy it as well. So if we end up with a demand in the system to buy 10 of them and the minimum order quantity from the supplier is 20, the recommendation for material planning would be to go and buy 20. So that's really what we want to get to, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So that's my introduction to the Ninja air fryer. We also switch on some functionality inside of the standard Sage bill of materials module. So let's just pop myself in here and we're just going to amend that item just so that you can see how my bill of material is structured. So I've got some hinges and nails and screws and some edge banding that are required in order to make my Ninja air fryer 3. Very basic components. What we also have are the operations. So again, these do not have to be used. If you are only interested in the full structure of building something and it's very materials based, that's fine too. However, if you really want to go right into the full functionality in manufacturing, I can design the operations that we go through, assign time to those. If I just go in and show you what that operation looks like, I can also say that this particular operation isn't one that we undertake, it's a subcontract process, and that subcontract process can therefore be managed. I can produce the purchase order to the subcontractor as part of my works order to produce the finished item and fully account for that in terms of cost. I can also say that the operation is an inspection operation. So if it is something that we undertake internally, we can present the solution with a number of questions that need to be answered at the end of each manufacturing stage. If I do that, and then I use something like shop floor data capture, which is the electronic capture of time. So a user would say, I'm here and I'm working on this works order. At the point at which they then say, I've completed that operation, their time is fed back through to the works order itself. And they are presented with a list of questions that they must answer before it can go on to the next stage of manufacture. Each of these things will either be relevant or not relevant to you, and they can be switched on or switched off accordingly. What the operation is also doing is determining how much time is required. If it knows how much time is estimated, this is a 25-minute assembler operation. If it knows how much time is required, then our solution in terms of material and resource planning is then able to plan for and compare to our availability. Our resources are set up in teams and individuals. We assign an operation to a resource, which is a team. As part of that team, we might have 4 people that are assemblers. Those 4 people are available for 8 hours a day. Therefore, I've got 32 hours of availability. If I know that my operation takes 25 minutes each time we build one of these, then I can plan for my capacity. How much time do I need? How much time do I have? How much time have I got left? That's what we're looking to achieve. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that in just a second. So now that we understand what my operation is, one of the other things that we switch on as part of the standard Sage bill of materials is something called byproducts. It may be relevant to some of you, it may not be to others. It's particularly relevant if you look at the type of organization. For instance, I've got a customer that manufactures olive oil, and their yield can be very different depending on temperature. What they end up with sometimes as well is a byproduct that they sell. So the byproduct to the virgin olive oil is something that they sell directly to the catering business, which isn't full grade virgin olive oil, but is a substitute for that. So they actually end up with a byproduct. So when you're booking in your finished item, you can say, I've manufactured 100 bottles of olive oil, and as a result of doing that, I actually also got 15 bottles of whatever the extract is. Again, it's also very relevant byproducts if you're looking at manufacturing something where let's say you're cutting a sheet, and that sheet that you always have to cut from is 10 by 10, but you only need 10 by 8. You're going to be left with a 2 by 10 byproduct, which you can book back into stock. Makes life and things nice and easy for you. Again, components, operations, things that I need to do, things that I need in order to build my Ninja air fryer. Once we understand that, again, I'm just going to pop us back into I've got a very basic one, but for those of you that are in a much more involved environment for manufacturing, I'm just going to give you an example of something that is a lot more detailed so that you can actually see the extent that the system can go to for you. So
just a point to make as well, Michelle, as with anybody who's operating with 200, of course, we can tidy up on the left-hand side exactly how much or how little you're working with as far as the actual features and
the menu items. No, you're 100% correct. It's always a difficult thing for me to show you nothing at all. But again, you're absolutely right, Howard. This menu is full of everything that Sage does and everything that Sicon does, including all of the things that we're talking about from a manufacturing perspective. That, of course, can be tidied up. It will only present you with those modules that you're licensed for, and then the individual users will be role-based and they'll have their version of what it looks like. So that the menu is much more tidy for those users to only be able to see what they're licensed for and what they do on a regular basis. They're absolutely right. So I'll go back to my full menu, to everything that I've got in here. And I'm just going to very quickly look at this particular item that's sitting here at the bottom, for this paracetamol. I'm just going to do an explosion of that bill of materials, just so that we can actually display that, just so that you can see how involved this particular one is. I've got one layer with 4 components and 1 operation. This particular finished item has a number of sub-assemblies within sub-assemblies. So we really do go very, very complex, quite detailed, using components at various different levels, and they can be as easy or as complex as you need them to be, pending all of the functionality that you're seeing. So that's just an example of how complex it could be, but we're going to keep to our very basic example of my Ninja air fryer. So we've got a minimum stock. What I'm going to do now is just going to present the system with some more demand based on my sales order processing. So I'm just going to pop myself into sales order processing. We're going to do a quick new order for my customer at Acme. And these guys at Acme would like to purchase. Again, I've got other bits and pieces switched on. Please don't feel overwhelmed by them, guys. I've got everything switched on. So I've got some pop-ups switched on. I've got some distribution screens switched on. There's options to do all sorts of lovely things. If any of them are interesting to you, speak to Howard. He can take you through them. But the reality is that we're going to concentrate on the manufacturing side. We're going to add our item in. My item, of course, is for my Ninja air fryer. I've got 3 of them in stock. I'm going to say that these guys would like 5. Don't have enough of them. I could allocate some of them. I'm going to need some more. We're going to sell them for £150, despite the fact that they only cost us £6 to make. So there's a nice bit of margin going on. But because the system knows that this is a manufactured item, we can also switch on some attributes so that those people in sales can can control what appears on the works order that's going to result at the end. So if you do want to define things like color, because that doesn't have an effect on cost, and it's just a slight deviation or iteration of our bill of materials. I don't want a new bill of materials for it. I just want to be able to say, build this one in this color, with this finish, with this gloss level, with this surface area, with this length, etc., etc. In the details, you'll also notice that we've got works order comments that we can add in here as well. So can you make sure it's in a pink box, please? So that the guys, when they're manufacturing it, can see what we need to do. We're not going to use any of that, guys. All we're really going to do is now say, save to that. Again, lots of distribution stuff switched on. So I've got a forecast entered into the system for this. Forecast is also demand. So when my MRP runs, it will look at what my minimum order quantity is, what my sales orders are, a combination of all the sales orders which we've got for that item, and also something that I can enter in and import as a forecast or enter in manually as a forecast for production. Because there's a forecast on for it, at the point at which I place an order for it, my system says, well, do you want to reduce your forecast down because you've now got an actual sales order, so we're not double counting our demand. All nice stuff. That's all part of MRP. So when you go into MRP, you have a facility for forecasting. You enter in a forecast, which results in a sales order. The system will prompt you to say, do you want to reduce your forecast then? So we're not going to. Just going to cancel off of that. We're just simply going to save that away, and you'll see a few bits and pieces which are going to happen off the back of my sales order now. So the first thing that's going to happen is, of course, that we get our sales order number. So 5993, remember that one. You'll also notice there's a little tab against the sales order, which gives me the works order detail, which we're going to come back to. Because the manufacturing suite also has projects, and again, I'm not going to harp on too much about projects today. You can look at that separately if you need to, but Howard's heard me say this a number of times. All that projects really is, and I make this sound really simplistic, it's a fantastic tool for project management, for project costing, but it is that place in the system that gives you one single holistic view of everything that you have done on a project. All of your
Now,
expenditure.
what I would say, Michelle, here is that at the end of the demonstration, we will be sending out a copy of the link to this particular webinar for people to sort of digest and pass around. What I'll also be including are we've done some similar style short videos with Sicon for things like projects. So we'll be sending a link around to people so they can see that in a more concentrated view as well. So I'll point that out.
Thank you, Howard. Thanks. But it is that single holistic view of all revenue and expenditure to understand how profitable I am. So rather than just saying, I want to be able to report on how much it costs me to manufacture those Ninja air fryers for this sales order, it might be that I have a continuous supply to a particular customer, or I want to look at my total profitability overall. So every time they order something from us, every time we buy something for them to satisfy that. So multiple works orders, multiple engagements, therefore single project, one view. That's what you would get from projects. We'll come back and look at that with you if you need to. The end result of my sales order, however, and again, this is an option, is that I have a little workflow that says, this is a manufactured item. You don't have enough of them to satisfy this sales order. Would you like to create a works order, an instruction for the guys in manufacturing to be able to build it? Now, I'm going to ignore this for today, but you could simply do it from here. Many people will say it's never sales decision what we do in production, Michelle, so switch that off. And I indeed am going to ignore it for the purpose of today's exercise, because what I would like my system to do is pick up that demand via MRP. But before we just do that, let me just acknowledge my sales order. The reason why I'm doing this slightly differently, guys, is because I do have it switched on. You don't have to enforce sales order acknowledgements to go out, but it's a great way of me being able to show you the Sicon documents piece from my finished item with the supporting documentation. So we're just going to display everything that needs to be acknowledged. There's our one. I can select as many as I need to. We're just going to select that one at the top. And rather than using the standard print function, I'm going to use this one here, which is called email and archive. And that will actually produce for me the sales order acknowledgement with my header page, with my terms and conditions, with my images that I've said that I want to go with it, all automated, with a nicely formatted email that has your HTML, your hyperlinks potentially in it, and that essential mail merge, if you want to look at it like that. I've got mine going into my draft so that I can show it to you rather than actually pushing it out the door. So let me just go into my drafts and we'll see that sales order acknowledgement with the corresponding documentation, images, specifications that we would like to go with it, with the nicely formatted email to Tony at Acme to acknowledge his sales order. And the order acknowledgement itself has that header page, the backgrounds, the terms and conditions that we have designed to go with it. But the most significant thing about that is that not only are we sending that out the door, but we're also seeing it against the sales order. And we have full traceability, therefore, of the documentation, which is either produced or attached to this entity. So when I am manufacturing, I can see all of the related documentation from the sales order. And there is my copy of the sales order that we sent out, which can be reproduced and emailed off elsewhere. That's the same as your dispatch notes and anything else like that. Just wanted to introduce that little element to you. But the end result of this is that we're going to run our MRP.
Sorry, while you're doing that, Michelle, just to point out as well, same as the projects, we've also done a short video on documents too. So we'll be including that link and we'll show people exactly how that operates.
No worries. Okay, so we're now at that point where MRP is going to pick up everything that I need to buy and everything that I need to build and recommend to me what those entities are. So over on the left-hand side of the screen, when this is running away, it's running through my 2,500 components, all of my finished items, my bill of materials. It's looking at the way that I buy it, how that I buy it, what I need to buy from demand. and what I need to build. The settings that sit behind this can be defaulted. So my defaults are show me all of the warehouses, group things together for me, use minimum stocks. But if I wanted to do this for a particular warehouse within a particular date range, I can run my MRP as many times as I need to. This can also be run on a scheduler overnight. So you might say run it at 3 o'clock in the morning so that when we get in at 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever time you get in to the office, it's ready and rocking so that we can see what the demand is looking like and take action accordingly. So as it runs itself through, the results are going to be, what should I delete because things have changed? What should I reschedule because demand has changed? What do I need to build and what do I need to buy? So my suggested works orders and my suggested purchase orders, which are just going through the process of completing now. Then it will start looking at not just things that we buy directly, but things that we might want to send directly to supplier or from supplier. So suggested purchase orders, supplier via stock, suggested purchase orders direct to customer. So we could take you through all of this. We'll do that more extensively if you need to see it. The things that you really need to see are the suggested works orders. So the things that we are now being told to build, and my suggested purchase orders, the things that we are being told to purchase. Off the back of these recommendations, we will be able to go in and set the system along its way. Your demand, your purchase orders, things that you've got coming in, everything that we do inside of the system is going to be displayed in here. So if I now want to transfer or translate my Ninja air fryer into a fully fledged works order, I can. If your settings are set up to bring your Ninja air fryer in, if I've excluded it from MRP, then it's going to be excluded from here. And in my purchase orders, what I need to buy in order to satisfy all of the things that we need to build and all of my customer demand. Because the other thing about MRP is it's not just looking at the things that you need to build. It's looking at, if you're a distribution organization, as well as being a manufacturer, it's not just looking at the things that I need to build and the components, it's looking at everything that I need to sell and where that demand is actually coming from. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this in a slightly different way, just so that I can show you. I wanted to be able to show you what MRP does, but I also want to be able to show you what you can do to create that demand off the back of the sales order. So suggested works orders that I can convert into full works orders, suggested purchase orders that I might then say, yeah, go ahead, I want to do exactly that. So again, what you're seeing here is when I select an item that doesn't have all of the information that it needs in order to be able to buy it, it will say, well, I don't have a supplier. Tell me who the supplier is. So I can go in and select my supplier accordingly. So we're just going to select our BGT. We're just going to pop ourselves in here and we're just going to say, yep, buy that and buy that. The reason why the system is telling me to buy those things is because I've got a minimum stock or sales orders. This is a sales order, as you can see. This is minimum stock. So the whole ream of different things that you can do off the back of this in order for you to be able to see the full traceability. If I then want to say, actually, no, I don't want to buy it from Corcoran Supplies. They are my preferred supplier, but on this particular occasion, I want to change that. I can go in and I can do exactly that by changing and looking at my purchase ledger. Of course, I'm then going to be able to set the price. So we'll buy those at £12 and we'll buy these at £14. And then at the point in time when I say, yes, please go ahead and create my purchase orders for me, it'll then make any pre-allocations. That's an important one. A pre-allocation is literally reserving and assigning your item to the entity that you bought it for. So if it is for a sales order, as this one is, for this large purple chair, then it will then reserve this purchase order for that sales order, make a pre-allocation, which is a soft allocation. So at the point at which that is then goods receipted, it will make a full allocation back to the sales order. So we're going to say, yes, please, go ahead and create my purchase orders. So things that we want to build, things that we want to buy. That's what MRP is doing for us. It will consolidate them if it needs to. So multiple lines on a single purchase order, if it's the same supplier. Mine has obviously created multiple purchase orders, and you'll see in here in material planning that it's telling me the reason why I've bought it. And because pre-allocations are switched on, I can go in and view the pre-allocation, and I can actually see that this purchase order is now reserved for this sales order 5959. It's been pre-allocated, and at the point in which it's then goods receipted, it would become hard allocated to my sales order. So all of those things can be done, and again, we can extend that demonstration for you as we go through. What we're going to do is we're going to bypass all of those things because of my settings that are in the system, and I'm simply going to go directly into works order processing, and I'm going to see I've got multiple demands to build lots and lots of Ninja air fryers, as you can see, as well as lots of other things as well. So I've got some bedpan ward washers in here. I've probably got some sausages and air fryers and pharmaceuticals and all sorts of stuff. So your last option, so create it off the back of the sales order, create it by going through MRP, or simply go in here and create a brand new works order, which we are creating. So I'm going to go in here and say, yeah, I do indeed want to build some of these Ninja air fryers. We're going to build 10 of them. In fact, we're going to build a bit more than 10. Let's actually go in and build 40 of those. And we'll simply say create. What this is now doing is exploding the bill of materials. And therefore, I now have full control over whether or not I am going to use the hinges and the nails and the screws, or whether or not I say, actually, wrong hinge on this particular occasion, remove that and add an alternative part. More than possible. It is also more than possible for you to be able to go in and delete a part that you don't want and not replace it with anything else. So I'm simply going to remove my edge banding. Everything that we do in here is maintained in a history. It does not have to feed back to my bill of materials, but if I want to go and create a new bill of materials based on what this now looks like, I can. If you're using traceability, you have the whole process all the way back to that works order. There is a utility inside of works order processing in here that will allow me to go and look at all works orders and allocate all the stock, issue all of the stock, book the finished items in one place. I'm doing it in my single works order here. So we're going to go in and we're going to say, yep, allocate all the stock, and it'll go away and do exactly that for me. Allocation process now done. If you're using shop floor data capture, my user would be able to log on to that operation, and their time would be logged against the operation in here. However, if you're not using shop floor data capture, you can go in and enter the time. So that every different stage of what we're looking to achieve today is controlled by you. If I want to go in and have a look at that item because there's not enough stock of it, I can simply right click it and I can view the stock item balances, the details, the history, the movements. I can go in and look at my free stock. I can go in and look at the sub-assembly details. So I've got full control over the management of my works order. Again, keep it simple today for us, guys. We're simply going to go in and say, yeah, select all of those. And now we're going to go through the picking process. If, again, you're using barcoding and warehousing from Sicon, you'll be able to then go and pick those items using barcoding and warehousing. If, however, you produce a pick list, I can do exactly that. I can produce my picking list from here. If you skip the picking process in its entirety and you want to backflush the item, that can be done too. The whole stage of moving these items along the bus, however, can be done independently of each other, not just as a whole finished item, and that's the whole process coming into play. We are going to now say, yep, that's now being used, issued, which means it takes it out of your stock, puts it into work in progress. Still your stock, but it's now part of my works order. My total works order cost is broken down by cost of components. It is also broken down by cost of labour, non-stock items, machine items, subcontract items, and overhead recovery costs to give me a total cost of the works order, which is then divided by the number that we have to give me a cost price per item. No more complex than that, but just gives you full flexibility, guys. We're simply going to go in and say, yeah, we're now finishing that. So we're going to go in and we're going to enter our time in manually here. So we're going to go in and add the time that my user, in this case, Lewis, spent on this works order. And we're just going to say, yeah, he did this on Friday and he spent 2 hours doing something that we estimated was going to maybe be far more or far less, so that we can get real accuracy. So with that, I'll update Lewis's timesheet as well as updating my works order with a potential different cost to that we estimated it to be. And the final bit of that pie is that we're then going to be able to book that finished item in. Again, if you're using traceability, we cater for all of those things. So potentially, if you had a recall, you'd be able to look at the individual components that were batched and used against the batched or serial numbered items that we produce. Mine, again, is really simple and really easy. And I now have 40 of those being booked in. And there we'll see them booked in to the system. Just to make you aware of the other documentation that you can produce: route cards, works order detail with sub-assemblies. You can expedite and look at all of the demand. I'm just going to show you really quickly in works order processing, this works order processing screen, because we went in and did ours individually. When you go into process works orders, however, you'll have a potential date range that you set. It will show you all of the works orders. And rather than going into each one individually, I'll simply be able to say, select all of those, allocate all of the stock across all of those works orders, wherever you can, issue what you can, unallocate, book in my finished item. Make that whole process easy for us. That's what we're looking to achieve. We're just going to pop ourselves back into the stock list just so that you can actually see when I refresh that list that I now have 40 of those in stock. Some of which would obviously then be allocated to my sales order if we've done that off the back of an MRP recommendation with the pre-allocation. It will of course set that pre-allocation to a hard allocation for me automatically. I've satisfied my minimum stock calculation, and we're now back up to a level that we want to maintain. Just to take you into material planning, we run our material planning so that we got a recommendation to what we should build and what we should purchase, but also as part of the whole material and resource planning utility, you get capacity planning, and capacity planning gives me my demand. So just to give you that graphical view, we can go right into the detail of this, guys, but we're going to keep ours relatively simple. Ignoring where I've got a particular works order in here where I had a nil level, so it's looking at that for me, and now what it's doing is showing me my labor demand, my labor availability, my machine demand compared to my machine availability. So you should be able to see a rough cut view of where your demand is at any point in time, what your capacity looks like, and plan for the eventualities for us to be able to go in to the scheduler and potentially move those works orders out in time. Again, this can be a lot more extensive than this, guys. Here's my works orders coming into view. There's my Ninja air fryer. If I said, no, let's not start that now, let's move that out in time and not start it until the 10th of October, we can start planning our production, and the underlying detail behind that works order is then moved along the bus so that you'll actually see the start date is now the 10th. The due date, based on the amount of time that we need in order to build 500 of them, is therefore going to be the 20th of October. So whole ream of different things that we can do. I'm going to stop talking. There's lots of reports that you can run on there, but hopefully that's been a good insight into what we can achieve with Sicon Manufacturing, and I will very happily answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Michelle. That was
You're
brilliant.
welcome.
Thanks very much for going through all of that. So look, just to go back over what we said initially, we have a couple of questions. Actually, Michelle, can you keep your screen shared just temporarily?
Yeah,
That's all right.
Of course.
Just because we may be relevant to some of the questions that we covered.
No worries.
So look, I'll invite anybody after seeing what you've seen there so far to put anything up in the chat, the Q&A, so that we can answer them directly. We have a couple of questions already that we'll just sort of take a look at first of all. So from, I think it's Carl earlier on mentioned, can the manufacturing attributes fields within the sales order be modified?
In so much as you can choose what populates the fields, what you can't do is change what those fields are, Carl. Those fields are set in the system. You can't add to them as such. Now, of course, you can always do some lovely things with analysis codes or works order comments, but the actual attributes are set. No, you can't. They can't be changed. But you can, of course, add to what the output is. I'm just going to pop myself back into the sales order list, Howard, just so that you can actually see what they are one more time. So when we go in and put a new full order on and we look at those attributes, we'll be able to see. So let's just pop myself back in here. And my item, my Ninja air fryer again, because it's a manufactured item. And you see the manufacturing attributes pop up. So these are the things which are set. So length, width, color, finish, gloss level, surface area, weight are preset and you can't add to them. But what you can do is tell the system what populates the color and what populates the finishes and what populates the gloss level.
Another request here is from Seamus, is warehousing an add-on? I can answer that. It is.
Yes.
It's an additional piece. Obviously, we do a bit of we have our own warehousing module as well. But if you're working in conjunction with the likes of the Sicon module, we recommend that you're using the Sicon barcoding and warehousing. Just simply because of the integrated nature of the actual modules, not only with Sage 200, but with the other Sicon modules involved. So I'll give you a good example of this. I mentioned earlier on that you can see on the left-hand side of Michelle's screen here is a list of modules that are available. So as I said, the projects module, the documents module, and even the cash flow module, we've had a trend of queries about. So what we did was we did some short kind of elevator pitch style videos, not webinar. We didn't do a presentation to anybody, but they're more to the point of exactly what those modules will actually do for you. So the documents module is a very strong one there as well, because you can nearly see that throughout. Now, if you're including that alongside the projects module, your works orders and so on, if you saw earlier on when Michelle was running the MRP module and it's generating purchase orders, if you're using the documents module or even the documents automation module, you can link purchase invoices directly against the actual purchase orders. So there is an AP facility there within those documents. And one of the nice things, if people want to ask us about, and I found out recently, now you correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, was the ability for even a purchase order coming in from a client can be converted to a sales order. Am I right in saying that?
with document automation, which is the OCR, optical character recognition
Yep.
solution that we have, your options are read your supplier invoices, read your supplier credit notes, or read your customers' demand coming in. So a purchase order for them would actually be created as a sales order for you.
Yeah, so that was a big inquiry we had for some time. Particularly if you're getting a purchase order from a client with a long list of items, rather than inputting them all in, you can convert that to effectively a sales order for you.
The example of that, Howard, where this is being used in earnest is on a supplier of catering crockery. So
yeah,
they constantly get very large demand on them for X amount of knives, forks, spoons, plates, side plates, etc., etc. And those orders are now being processed through document automation.
Yeah. So the answer is long-winded, yes, and you probably saw some cross-selling with some other modules that we're talking about as well. But you know, these are all, you have the facility to pick and choose which specific items will suit you best. And of course, the nice thing is that the majority of them do integrate with each other.
Exactly.
So I'll just leave it open just for a second or so, just to see if anybody else has any other questions, if you want to put them forward to us. So as I said earlier on, you know, we can configure the look and feel of what, you know, what sort of access people have. We can break it down to the individual user, how they're operating. With that shop floor data collection as well, Michelle, I take it we can break it down to sort of a small tablet where they can enter in, you know, literally the work orders as they're actually going through them.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, works order from shop floor data capture perspective, we normally find it's a tablet that people use, so that multiple people go to a tablet, log in and use a barcoding scanner to say, I'm now doing this, so that it's recording their time. But actually, if I just switch my camera on, which is always the dodgy thing to do in a live environment, but I'll switch my camera on just so that I can wave it to you on the screen. This device that I'm using is an Android device. Is what I have my barcoding on. I have my shop floor data capture on there. And ultimately, it just means that a user can go in and essentially log in. I'm just going to wave it at the screen rather than project it on the screen, guys, just so that you can actually see it. You can see what's actually happening. If I just put that in front of the camera, there you go. You can see actually, so I get a keypad and I say, this is who I am as an individual. And then it will present me with a list of operations. So I'm clocked in essentially, and then I'm presented with a list of works order operations. I'll just wave this on the screen just so that you can see again. So hopefully you'll see that the very top one on there is for my Ninja air fryer. That's really what they're logging into, and you're basically saying this is the amount of time I'm spending on that activity.
And the high level thing that I try and get across to people here, and it's sort of alluded to it at the start with the intros, the fact that, you know, you don't have to have a long-winded, complicated process. You know, we can simplify an awful lot of things that suit. It's our job, basically my job, and as part of DB, to qualify exactly what that solution is going to look like for you. So we need to take a look at the entire picture of the operation, you know, what your aspirations are for putting something like that in. We take a look at your existing resources and what you can manage on your side, and budget also. So we take all of that into consideration before we put forward any kind of solution to you. But it's important, principally at the start, to go through a little bit of that qualification process. So I'd extend that out to everybody here who's attending the actual webinar today. You know, if it's a case that you do have any queries whatsoever, you know, do get in touch afterwards.